Naruto as a series has a lot of concepts and observations we become more familiar with as the story goes on, and many of them revolve around the Uchiha clan, one of the most important clans in the story. But a lot of people misunderstand the actual clan, and it's this guy's fault. And you know, it's one thing that people use his words to mischaracterize the entire clan like it's gospel, but when you really think about it, it really makes no sense that they do. Because here's the thing, Tobirama was wrong. A lot. I don't have to take my word for it because the magnitude of how wrong he was is so massive, it's literally one of the most important themes of the series going all the way back to the Land of Waves.
Did you know there are more than 100 principles of shinobi conduct? I memorized every single one. They asked us to explain the 25th principle. I got it right, of course. A shinobi never shows his feelings, no matter what the circumstances. Feelings are a weakness that only cloud his judgment and weaken his sense of duty.
You see, Tobirama has got a bit of a reputation as the racist Hokage because of his attitude towards the Uchiha clan. But while the meme is overblown in its seriousness, it still originates from a single truth. Tobirama has an unconscious sense of paranoia when it comes to the Uchiha clan. Actually, unconscious feels kind of generous. It's pretty conscious. Sure, he and his defenders will say he doesn't hate the Uchiha clan, but that rings hollow when he says things like,
"You belong to the Uchiha, do you? Of course you'd stick with a scoundrel.
And
the Uchiha are a clan possessed by evil."
I cannot tell you how genuinely baffling it is to watch people listen to someone go, every single person in this group of people is evil. And then their response is simply, yes, this guy clearly knows more about that group of people than even the group of people themselves.
Tobirama, I thought I told you to stop saying things like that.
You're too soft, elder brother.
The thing so many people fail to remember about the second Hokage was that he was literally raised to distrust and fight the Uchiha. When he says things like this, it's important to remember that under no circumstances should he be looked as a source of unbiased information.
Shinobi don't cry. They're born into this world to fight and die in battle.
Ever since he was a child, Tobirama had a clear view of how shinobi must operate, suppressing their emotions in order to act properly. And considering that Konoha was the first hidden village and Tobirama played an integral part in the creation of the village other villages would model themselves after, it makes sense that this philosophy of his would come to become the idea of shinobi as tools that would be such a problem for the rest of the series. Though I must clarify that this view wasn't really unique to him at the time, a lot of people had it, but you know, he's the one who would have had to write it down as one of the founders of Konoha. Tobirama's mistrust of the Uchiha was not just because of his biases, but his view on how the Sharingan worked. A very clear progression in power caused by the emotions they feel. And he considered this to be a sign of the so-called curse of hatred, a term Tobirama made up to refer to the trait he considered so dangerous, placing it as antithetical to the will of fire. But actually looking into it reveals that this idea has several flaws. For starters, Tobirama's understanding of the Sharingan itself is pretty flawed. He claims that the Sharingan, not the Mangekyo Sharingan but its base form, is activated by the agony of a great loss or disappointment in oneself, and that the Sharingan gets stronger because of hatred. But that's contradicted by things we the audience see in the story, even all the way back in part 1. When Sasuke re-unlocked his Sharingan, he did it to focus on protecting Naruto. When it matured to the 3 Tomoe Sharingan while he was fighting Naruto, it was in response to taking Naruto's resolve seriously, not hatred. Yes, the Sharingan can be activated the way Tobirama describes, and we do see that happen, but that isn't all there is to it. It's linked to all sorts of emotions. And consider this, if the Sharingan's evolution is the result of special chakra in the brain of the users in reaction to strong emotions, what does it mean that Kakashi was able to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan and become so powerful with it? Maybe that special chakra isn't so special, and maybe the Uchiha aren't as unique as he thinks. This is kind of the problem with a character like Tobirama. He's a genius, and he's referred to as such. So many people wind up taking his word at face value no matter how clearly wrong he is, unless someone who is equally as smart as him says the opposite. And if the narrative contradicts what he said, well, then the narrative must be wrong. Even now in Boruto, you can see people referring to times where Sarada's Sharingan doesn't conform to Tobirama's explanation as an inconsistency in the writing, rather than entertain the idea that the guy who thought her clan is possessed by evil was wrong. Because the thing is, Sarada is really the only Uchiha we've seen who hasn't suffered through war or genocide. If anything, she's a case study for what an untraumatized Uchiha looks like, which, frankly, says a lot about what's considered not that traumatic in this story. It's even stranger to see people use this as proof that the curse of hatred is broken, like Sasuke's DNA and the very way his Kekai Genkai walk has just changed because he made peace with Naruto when he was 17. A big problem with the idea of the curse of hatred as some sort of Uchiha-centric problem is that it's not. The concept behind this is common in everyone in the Naruto-verse. Gaara, Neji, Nagato, so many characters who gave in to hate after losing something they love. So it actually feels kind of weird to try and push this idea that the Uchiha just love more than everyone else in the story. And conversely, there are so many characters who go through so much turmoil without succumbing to hatred, to the point where some people actually find that unbelievable. Kakashi, Naruto, Itachi. Yeah, Itachi. There are Uchiha who don't follow the supposed evil their clan is cursed by, but they are treated as special exceptions to the rule instead of evidence that the rule is kind of bullshit. Unless you're going to try and argue that Itachi wasn't exposed to extremely strong emotions. I mean, it's not like Tobirama was right there when, despite Madara's brother being killed by him, Madara was still willing to make an attempt at peace, even stopping Hashirama, the only one who could stop him, from killing himself in order to achieve it. Even the correlation between emotions and power isn't unique to the Uchiha, though it is much more notable in them. There are examples of people getting stronger because of their mental states. Naruto, a main character, demonstrates this against Gaara in the Forest of Death. Nagato went nuts after Yahiko died. Remember, the characters we do see in the story are all just unbelievably powerful prodigies. The average Uchiha is not reaching the level of even pre-Mangekyo Sharingan Sasuke. The very concept of ninshu, the precursor to ninjutsu, is meant to help people connect with each other through their emotions. It's like super empathy. Trying to suppress one's emotions for the sake of ninjutsu is simply counterintuitive. Though if we're being honest, it's not so much for the sake of ninjutsu as it is for the sake of obedience. In the end, when I look at the curse of hatred as a concept, I don't see some massive curse on an entire bloodline. I see one man's reductive view on the concept of the cycle of hatred, localized on a group he has a clear bias against because of his history with them and how antithetical they stand to his view on what the ideal ninja must be, because of how clear the relationship between their emotions and their power is. You can literally see it in their eyes. Tobirama's mistrust of the Uchiha was also born of the idea that they could one day be a threat to Konoha, and the decision to place them in the police force of the village was made as one meant to put their abilities to use for that village, regardless of how it would affect the clan. But if anything, this just created a self-fulfilling prophecy, creating divides between the Uchiha and the rest of Konoha. Ironically, Tobirama brushes off the fact that his own Edo Tensei jutsu has also been having negative effects, telling his brother to shut up when he tries to bring it up, almost as if anything could be a danger to the village if mismanaged. And the Uchiha were mismanaged, marginalized due to the baseless suspicion that they masterminded the Nine Tails attack and illegally spied on by the village they had sworn to protect with their lives. Now, I wonder if there was anyone who thought that this might happen. Oh yeah, right, the guy who planted so much paranoia in Tobirama in the first place. Conflict was inevitable if something didn't change. And if that change came in the form of wiping them all out with the use of one child carrying the burden of the crime so the village could save face, well, no sane person is going to look at that and refer to it as a success. I'm not joking, if you look at that and refer to it as a success, I'm just going to assume you're not sane. Even Tobirama's decision to put their talents to use for the village would become something twisted when Danzo used the massacre to justify taking their eyes, and the power that came with it, for himself. For the sake of the village, of course. According to the third Hokage, Danzo was essentially the successor to Tobirama's work in creating the village, and in many ways Danzo is the logical extreme of Tobirama, building on precedents set by the Second Hokage. If shinobi must work without emotions, would the best shinobi not be ones who lacked it? If everything must be done for the sake of the village, even if it's to the detriment of others, then why shouldn't he pluck the useful Sharingan out of the skulls of the dead Uchiha? Tobirama may not have been evil, but the flaws in his viewpoints laid the groundwork for so many problems the current generation would have to face. Of course, some will make the argument that the Uchiha clan is obviously evil because look at the members of the clan we see in the story. All antagonists. It's almost like everyone who could possibly be an example of a good Uchiha was massacred as a cascading effect of the discrimination against the Uchiha clan, and the sole survivor is traumatized and motivated by the not unreasonable but extremely emotional desire to avenge the dead. Or something. Honestly, there is just something incredibly wrong with the idea of trying to justify a suspicious view of the Uchiha with the few surviving members in the story we see being villains, when the reason those are the only surviving members is because the rest were all massacred after some of them wanted to perform a coup as a last resort response to the discrimination they faced due to the suspicious view that was had on the Uchiha. Sounds like a cycle of hatred or something. Even when you look at Tobirama's black friends, I'm sorry, the Uchiha he considered trustworthy, they were the ones who were able to go beyond the framework of their clans and devote everything to the village. Clearly, that is the metric he uses to measure what a good Uchiha is. An underlying premise in Naruto that I'm gonna be honest goes a bit undernoted even in the story is the failure of shinobi villages to do what they are supposed to do: foster peace. Instead, they all became nationalistic hubs that engage in even larger scale wars, more concerned with protecting their own existence than their people. Sure, they encourage people to go beyond the framework of clan warfare, but that just lets them into the even larger cage of village warfare, and in the service of a system that values them even less than their clans did. The Will of Fire may be Konoha's pet ideology, but the fact it can be used to try and justify wiping out one of the founding clans of the village because any sacrifice is worth it for the village shows that it's ultimately can be a huge failure when it comes to the goal of protecting its people. How is the village meant to foster and protect its future when, come wartime, it has no problem sacrificing that future as bodies on the battlefield? All for the sake of a future even further ahead that will also be sacrificed. I mean, we know how. It's because no matter what, they are simply considered tools, useful only in the protection and operation of the village. And if they aren't, well then, they're criminals. After all, the village is what is most important.
I still believe that protecting the village will in turn lead to the protection of all the people, shinobi and children. I won't forgive anyone who would dare to threaten the village, be they friend, sibling, or even my own child.
That's all well and good, Mr. First Hokage, but what exactly are you protecting if the people who live in the village clearly aren't it?
You have got your priorities backwards. It will someday lead the village to darkness.
If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and a comment down below so that the algorithm doesn't bury it. And also for the algorithm, feel free to check out my other Naruto content or just my content in general. Thank you and good day.